Good morning, friends and my dear students. Welcome back to the class, and we shall continue the lesson History Unit 10, Social Transformation in Tamil Nadu. Already we have covered up first three topics. The first three topics, so to say, we started with the introduction of the transformation movement by the arrival of Europeans, which was considered to be a negative aspect, but later on it brought about the advantages of bringing some changes in the society transformation. And also we talked about the Tamil Renaissance, advent of printing technology. We talked about Tirukkural, Thamiran Vanakkam, and we also talked about some Tamil scholars along with other scholars who contributed, and another one, Tamil intellectuals who also contributed a lot in the 19th century. The second topic, we talked about the rise of Dravidian movement, how this particular movement brought about the development of this particular society of the people. And the third one also, we talked about the South Indian Liberal Federation and their programs and their activities. Now in this session, we are going to have some knowledge and idea about a self-respect movement. In Tamil, Suya Mariyadai Iyakkam. Actually, this self-respect movement, which was started by great leaders, and what are the main ideas? That's what we are going to talk about. The self-respect movement's support, its self-respect movement declarations, self-respect movement's demand. The first one we are going to talk about. Under this movement, the first person to talk about is Periyar E.V. Ramasamy and his life and work. And next one, Rettai Srinivasan, and the third person, M.C. Raja. So these are the people who contributed a lot towards this self-respect movement in conquering, accepting, bringing about a lot of changes in the society. And the fifth one, we are also learning about the labor movement in Tamil Nadu based on the workers. What are the development changes brought in Tamil Nadu? Its origin. And the great person of this movement is the Singara Velar. And the last one, we are going to have a touch up with the language agitation and women's movement in Tamil Nadu. So these are the other movements which emerged along with the Tamil Renaissance. Yes, we'll proceed with the first one, which is self-respect movement. Self-respect movement advocated, supported a casteless society, devoid of rituals, different based on birth. We are all, by birth, we are based on a particular religion. By birth, we belong to a particular caste. By birth, we belong to a particular society or the region. So we should be coming out of it to have a good social living being. So second one, it declared, its a declaration is a rationality and self-respect. The birthright of all human beings, and held these as more important than the self-rule. Very important. Our self-respect is very, very important than the self-rule. That's what it's a major declaration. And another aspect is illiteracy. Illiteracy as a source for women's subordination. In the beginning, during the Gurukul, we never talk of a girl going to the school. A woman educated. So literacy was a major source of the subordination of the women's society. So it promoted a compulsory elementary education for all, which means not only for men, it is also for women. This self-respect movement the third one, demanded women's emancipation, deplored suppressions, and it emphasized more on rationality. And this self-respect movement championed mainly focused on not only the causes of the non-Brahmin Hindus, it fought for not only the non-Brahmin Hindus, but it also fought for the Muslims. So these are the major concepts when you talk about this self-respect movement. The person who played major role in the self-respect movement is Periyar. E.V. Ramasamy. He lived between the year 1879 to 1973. To talk about his life, he was a son of a wealthy businessman in Erode, that is Venkatappa, and his mother is Chinnatayammal. He was born to these parents. In his lifetime, he possessed a little formal education. He was not a great doctorate or anything. He possessed some knowledge, education, and he engaged himself in the critical discussions with the various scholars who used to be patronized by his devoted father, who supported because of the great work of his father. So with their support, he started to have a lot of discussion among the scholars. And as a young man, once he ran away from the home, leaving his family, and spent many of the months in Varanasi and other religious center. Varanasi is a major center for Hindu religion, and not only there, so many other places he went around and started learning about how the people are living, how the people are mingling with others. So to see all this aspect, he has moved on to various religious centers and spent his lifetime. The first-hand experience of Orthodox Hindu religion led him to a disillusionment with the religion. The experience of him with the Hindu religious people made him to have some aversion toward this religion. So afterwards he came back. On his return, again he took care of his family business for a few years, and afterwards he continued to have a selfless public service towards the people, and he made him a popular personality. He held a different official position of Erode. So to say, the first one, a chairmanship of municipal council during the time 1918 to 1919. He had a position in the Erode municipality. So when you talk about his life, what are his major work? And we talk about, he was the founder of the self-respect movement. So along with the selfless service activities, he also found another movement which is called as the self-respect movement. What are his major works? As the president of the Tamil Nadu Congress Committee, Periyar proposed a resolution regarding the rights of untouchables to the temple. Very important. People were not allowed to enter the temple other than the Brahmins. So he fought for these particular group of people. So the people were not allowed to enter the temple in the name of caste, dharma, and the lower caste. People were denied access to the temples, and there is stress surrounding the temple. So first one, he fought for the non-Brahmins for the entry into the temple. The second one, he also fought in Vaikam. What was the situation in the Vaikam? Vaikam is a town in the princely state of Travancore, and he spent a day in Kerala. People protested against this particular practice. What is the particular practice? People hailed him as a Vaikam hero when the people were not allowed to enter in the temple. Already we had talked about this particular concept earlier. The same aspects, when the people were not allowed to enter, he fought for those particular people, and thus he got a victory, and they hailed him as a hero. So he is known as a Vaikam hero. At the same time, he distributed by the caste-based discrimination in the dining hall at the Charanma Devi Gurukulam. He went for a visit which was run by the Congress member. He went for a visit, and when they had a meal, he saw the discrimination among the students. So, he was disappointed, and despite his objections and protests against this particular discrimination, but Congress continued to support the inquisition practice in this particular Gurukulam. The Congress leader was V.V. Subramaniam, so he continued to do that. So, moving away from the Congress, he started the movement, self-respect movement, in the year 1925. So, at this time, Periyar understood the relevance of mass communication, media. Due the publication of the newspaper, publication of the magazines to the media, so he understood the mass communication. So he started a number of newspapers and journals. For example, Kudiyarasu, which is democracy, in the year 1925. Another one is a revolt, Purachi, a revolution. Another one is Paguttarivu, or rationalism, in 1934. And Vidudalai, liberation, in the year 1935. Among all these, Kudiyarasu was the official newspaper of the self-respect movement. So these are the major work contributed by Thandai Periyar. Periyar and his close relatives, association with the other leaders, how he was able to do all these activities, because without support, we know it, in the politics, without support of another great people, we cannot proceed like these great works, opposing the government. So he had a close relationship with the Singaravelar. Already we have talked about him. Singaravelar is a very great person who contributed a lot to the Tamil society, even in the political field. And this Singaravelar, who is considered the first communist of the South Indian and a pioneer of Buddhism. So with his support, Periyar could achieve a lot of things. And the second one, he got Dr. B.R. Ambedkar's annihilation in the basis of the caste translated into Tamil immediately after it was written. He also was supported Ambedkar's demand for the separation of electorates for the scheduled caste. So we know it, Ambedkar asked for the particular percentage of it should be kept for the scheduled caste people. So for this concept, Periyar also supported, and he got the support of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar too. When he talked about self-respect movement, we also talked about their own support and various concepts. Now, under the leadership of Periyar, what are the concepts he has opposed? A particular event is opposing compulsory Hindi in the schools. What is the reason to remove or to avoid not entering, not bringing Hindi into our school, making it as a compulsory one. Because Rajaji's government moved to introduce this particular compulsory Hindi in the schools, and they launched a popular movement to oppose it. Started by Periyar, it is the anti-Hindi agitation in 1973 and till 1939. It had a big impact on Tamil Nadu's politics, because a particular language is coming to conquer over another particular language. Periyar was imprisoned for this particular reason and had a great role in the movement of self-respect. When he was still in prison, jail, Periyar was elected as a president of the Justice Party for the election. Thereafter, Justice Party merged with the self-respect movement. It was birth of another movement called Dravidar Kalagam. So, self-respect movement and the Justice Party both merged together and born as a new movement which is called as Dravidar Kalagam. And from this Dravidar Kalagam, for our knowledge, various other parties has come about. Dravida Munnetra Kalagam, okay, ADMK, Anna Dravida Munnetra Kalagam. So these are all emerged from this movement. So Periyar has a great role to play in the development of self-respect movement and the birth of Dravidar Kalagam. The Dravidar Kalagam, which started in the year 1944. As the leader of this Dravidar Kalagam, as the founder of self-respect movement, Periyar criticized, so to say, the occasional education program. What is this occasional education program? Training in tune with the father's occupation. Another concept to say is Kula Kalvi Tittam, caste-based educational scheme. See, what are the different names? Occasional educational program. Kulakalvi Tittam means caste-based education scheme. See how worst the situation. Even the education was received by the people based on their caste. And he opposed it tooth and nail. To the full force, he opposed this particular system of education. He was against it and led to the resignation of Rajaji. So Rajaji was at the power. He asked Rajaji, who was supporting all this, to give up his post. So by removing Rajaji, K. Kamaraj became the chief minister of Madras state at this time. Periyar died at the age of 94 in the year 1973. His mortal remains were buried at the Periyar Tidal, Madras. So when you talk about Periyar, has contributed a lot. Another aspect, very important aspect, to talk about Periyar is as Thandai Periyar. It was named by the Women Federation for helping the women's society to the high level, women's society to be a respectful one. Thus, Periyar is also considered as a feminist. So when you talk about, Periyar was a critical and patriotical. He condemned the child marriage and Devadasi system. So child marriage, we know it below, because now the age limit for the women is 18 and for the men is 21. But earlier, even at the age of 10, 11, 12, they gave in marriage. They gave the girl in marriage. So it is all considered to be the child marriage. Even in the few years, okay, they give in marriage. So those aspects. Second one is the Devadasi system. Very important. Earlier in the temple, girls were offered for the service purpose. They have to clean the temple. They have to serve the so-called the church priest, Hindu religious priests, gurus in the temple. But later on, they turned into upside down as a prostitution in the temple. So against this, a movement emerged and they fought for this. This movement is called as Devadasi. So he condemned this great movement which were support for the women's society. Right from 1929, Periyar had been emphasizing women's right to divorce and property. So he fought that there should not be any more divorce. Another one, he also fought for women should acquire some property from his own parents. That is a major concept he brought about. This, he said, having some property from their woman gives them, making them something recognizable. And thus he objected to the term like women giving in marriage. Even today we say it. I give my daughter in marriage. I give my granddaughter, I gave my sister in marriage. Giving something in marriage is considered to be a thing. That's what Periyar says. Don't consider woman as a thing giving in marriage. Consider to be a human being like you. Thus he said, treats woman as a thing. He wants it substituted by companion. So he used the word Valkai Thunai. Don't say you are giving your daughter in marriage. I am giving my daughter as a companion. Give as a Valkai Thunai, not as a thing. So that was a major idea brought by him. A word for marriage taken from, it is a Tirukkural. When you consider concepts from Tirukkural, this is a companion. It is not a thing. Periyar believed that the proper right for women would provide them a social status and protection. Even today in our family, we consider if a father purchases a land or a home, they write at once in the name of his wife. Some of them use it for various purposes, but main purpose is for the children will recognize, or sometime when the parents give some property to the particular son-in-law or someone, they give in the daughter's name. Because only then in the family they will have some respect for their daughter. That's why the properties are being acquired by the women. So that's what Periyar says here. If you give them in their name, what will happen? They will have some recognition. They will have various advantages out of it. They will have a protection. In the year 1989, the government of Tamil Nadu fulfilled the dream of radical reforms by the introduction of the Hindu Successions Tamil Nadu Amendment Act of 1989, which ensured the equal right to ancestral property for women in the inheritance. This particular act became a transitor and led to the similar legislation at the national level. So see, a person like Periyar who had a less education has a great thinking. So it is not by only education we are becoming great, by our great thinking and our great service which was contributed by Periyar. The second person we are going to talk about is Rettai Srinivasan, who lived between the year 1859 to 1945. Rettai Srinivasan was born in 1859 at Kanchipuram. He fought mainly for the social justice, equality and civil rights of the marginalized in the caste order. As he had experienced the hurdles of untouchability, he took this initiative to fight for mainly for the justice, equality and civil rights. He was honored with such titles as Rao Sahib, Rao Bahadur and Diwan Bahadur for his selfless services, the contribution of his work towards the society. His autobiography, the work GVS Sarita Surukam, GVS Sarita Surukam, a brief autography which was published in the year 1939, is one of the earliest autography written by these great scholars. He founded this Adi Dravida Mahajana Sabha, which was formed in the year 1893. He served as a president of this Scheduled Caste Federation and the Madras Provincial Depressed Classes Federation. So he had a good position to have a role to play. A close associate, he also had a good relationship with Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, and he participated in the first and the second roundtable conference held in London in the year 1930 and in the year 1931. He also has voiced the opinions of the marginalized section of the society. He was as a signatory of the Pune Pact of 1932. We learnt about all these concepts, the Roundtable Conference, Pune Pact in the Indian history. So these are the role played by this Rettai Srinivasan. The third person we are going to see in the same movement is M.C. Raja. So normally he was named as Mailai Chinnathambi Raja. He lived during the time 1883 to 1943. He was one of the prominent leaders from the depressed class. So he has come from the all these problems, situation, criticism, discriminations, and he has come up. So he knows what to do. So he started his career as a teacher. He wrote a different textbook for schools and colleges. And he was one of the founding members of the South Indian Liberal Federation, which we called as the Justice Party. He became the first elected legislative council member. Elected council member in the year 1920 to 1926 from the depressed class in the Madras province. He functioned as the deputy leader of the Justice Party in the Madras Legislative Council in the year 1929. He founded All India Depressed Class Association and was its long-time leader. So when you talk about this M.C. Raja as a leader of this a particular member of this particular movement, he played a lot of role to bring up this depressed class to the high level, contributing a lot, bringing about various movements, bringing about various support towards these people. Yes, my dear friends, that's the major role of this self-respect movement towards the Tamil society's transformation of Tamil Nadu. Another movement we are going to talk about is the labor movement in Tamil Nadu. We know it, labor movement is a working class. How this labor movement started? What is the source for it? In the First World War, which took place in 1914 to 1918, provided a industrial growth in India because so many concepts were developed and the industry started to emerge in India. These industries, catering to the wartime needs, had employed a huge number of workers. Catering means the need of the various weapons, various things in the war. They employed, a lot of people were employed in the particular industries. At the end of the war, there were so much of cost cutting. What is the cost cutting? The reduction of wages across the industries. As the wartime requirements receded, it combined with the high prices. This gave a momentum to the labor movement. It became a birth to the labor movement. B.P. Vadia, M. Singaravelar, Thiruvi Kalyanasudaram and others initiated this particular formation of labor unions in the Madras Presidency. They played a major role in the Madras Presidency to bring about this particular labor union. In the year 1918, India's first organized trade union, Madras Labor Union, all these are formed. The first All India Trade Union Conference was held on October 31st, 1920 in Bombay. The delegates discussed several resolutions which includes a demand for the protection from the police interference in the labor disputes. Second one, the maintenance of an unemployment register. Third one, restriction on exporting foodstuffs. And the fourth one is compensation for injuries and health insurance. These are the major resolutions which are discussed in this particular All India Trade Union Conference, which was held on October 31st, 1920 in Bombay. And in this particular labor movement in Tamil Nadu, there was a pioneer, a very well-known person, M. Singaravelar, who lived, already we have talked about, lived between 1860 to 1946, who was born in Madras and graduated from the Presidency College, University of Madras, advocated Buddhism in his early life. He knew many languages. Example, Tamil, English, Urdu, Hindi, German, French and Russian. Knowing all these languages, by understanding the concept of Western and various other scholars, he wrote about the ideas of Karl Marx, Charles Darwin, Herbert Spencer and Albert Einstein in Tamil. So about all their ideas and concepts he has written in Tamil. He organized a first ever celebration of May Day in 1923. Today we call it the 1st of May as a Labour's Day. So that's what it started in the year 1923. It was started by this M. Singaravelar. He published a Tamil newspaper, that is a Tholilan, worker, to address the problems of the working class. See, even they had a specific newspaper only for the problem of these workers. He was closely associated with, already we have talked about Periyar and this particular self-respect movement. He was very also support, because without a support, already we talked about, without the support of person who is an authority in power, we cannot bring about any movement. So he was not, because of that, he was good associate, so he could do various other things into the society. And another important movement which emerged is language agitation. Language agitation before independence. In general, language is a dominant symbol, because most of the time we find in the world fight based on language. It is a dominant symbol of identity, and it is associated with the culture and sentiments of any society. Okay, so mainly when you talk about when you talk about the worldwide, based on the countries we are separated. When you talk about national level, we are based on language, we are separated. When you come to particular state, the particular language, we are separated by the caste, separated by the various other things, aspects. So that's what. So this is the major important aspect. Based on language, we are separated, and it's a great identity too. Our language, Tamil, regained its prominence in the later half of the 19th century and early 20th century. We talked about Marimalai Adigal, who started the pure Tamil movement. He said he brought about the language reforms of Periyar, and Tamil Isai movement helped to galvanize the Tamil language. The Tamil Renaissance, which we are talking about so long time, led the Dravidian concessions, made a great intervention in the development of the modern Tamil language and its art forms. Abraham Pandidar has systematically studied the history of Tamil music, and he attempted to reconstruct the ancient Tamil musical system. So he found a Tanjore Sangeeta Vidya Mahajan Sangam in the year 1912, and this particular Sangam became a kernel, a center of the Tamil Isai movement, Tamil music movement. The movement gave importance to the singing of Tamil, the compositions in the music concerts. The Tamil Isai Conference, which was held in 1943, discussed the status of Tamil music. Already we have talked about the Tamil agitation. Another aspect is the implementation of Hindi as a compulsory language in Tamil Nadu. At the various points, it was seen a threat to Tamil language and culture. Imposing of another language in particular state where it has its own original language, it is a threat for them. Not only for the language, it is also a threat for the culture. So Periyar declared that the introduction of Hindi over Tamil would deny Dravidians of our job opportunities. Even today we are fighting for it. And thus Marimalai Adigal pointed out that the Tamil language would suffer with the introduction of Hindi. We see some of the political parties, we see some of the Tamil movement associates still today fighting for it, with the fear that it will destroy our Tamil culture and language. The anti-Hindi campaigners considered it as an ideological battle against the Brahminism and the domination of Sanskrit over Tamil. So this is the major idea why these people are fighting for the implementation of Hindi as a compulsory one. The last movement which we are going to talk about is the women's movement. When you talk about women's movement, the major role played by among all the leaders is Periyar. There were several streams, in the sense there are several ways of women's movements and organization established in the early 20th century to address a particular question of women's empowerment in Madras Presidency. There are so many ways, so many people emerged. In the same way, Women's Indian Association WIA and All India Women's Conference AIWC are the important among them in Tamil Nadu. So these are the two movements which are very important among those various streams, means various things, various movements which emerge mainly for women. Among all these movements, these two movements are very, very important. To talk about WIA, Women's Indian Association, which was started in the year 1917 by Annie Besant. Actually, when you talk about Annie Besant, is Dorothy Jinarajadasa and Margaret cousins at Adayar of Madras. The association published pamphlets and bulletins, a small book, pamphlets and bulletins in different languages to a detail that the problems of personal of the marriage laws, voting rights, child care and women's role in the public. So major concept has brought about to the awareness of the society. And when you talk about this second one, All India Women's Conference, which was started in the year 1927, which addressed the problem of women's education and recommended the government implement various policies for the upliftment of the women. So these are the various reasons for what they are fighting for. So to come to the conclusion of this particular concept of self-respect movement, what are their contribution on women's movement? Women's liberation was one of the important objectives of the self-respect movement. These particular self-respecters, the leaders led by Periyar, worked for the gender equality. It's not talking about caste or the society, means the discrimination. He is talking about discrimination in the family. He is talking about the unbalanced situation in the family between the father and the mother, boy child and the girl child. So, gender equality and the gender sensitization of the society. The movement provided a particular space for women to share their ideas, opinions in the society. And there were several women activists in the movement. Okay, Muthulashmi Ammayar, Nagammai, Kannamma, Nilavadi, Moovulur Rathiram, Moovulur Ramamirdam, Rukmani Ammal, another one Thayammal, Neelambigai and Sivagami Chidambaranar are the very well prominent among them. So these are very well known people, and there are also so many other people who fought along with these great leaders. There was a custom of dedicating. So we talked about already the Devada's system, which was abolished with the support of Periyar and various other women great leaders. So this particular custom of dedicating young girls to the Hindu temples as a servant of God, known as Devadasi. Actually, they intended as a service to God, it soon got corrupted, leading to the extensive of immortality. Extensive of immorality and abuse of women. And Dr. Muthulashmi Ammayar was a forefront who was leading the people of the campaign pressing for the legislation to abolish this Devadasi system. And with the closeness, the oneness of Periyar, when he talked about Muthulashmi Ammayar, when he talked about various Annie Besant, all these great leaders joined together and fought against this Devadasi system. And thus Madras Devadasi, that is a Prevention of Dedication Act 1947, was enacted by the government. Yes, my dear friends, a social transformation in Tamil Nadu has brought about lot of changes. All these changes are for the welfare of the society. All these are for the betterment of you and me. Have we kept up? Have we destroyed these great work, great service of these great leaders? It is the time for us. It is time for you and me to think. Tamil Renaissance. How far have we kept our language saved, preserved? How far we are respecting the women's society? How far our culture and the heritage are preserved? Let us cogitate and lead a life of a happy and a peaceful manner with all our culture and heritage. Thank you.